You know what's been on my mind lately? Bitcoin as a reserve asset.
Wait, you mean central banks holding Bitcoin?
Yeah. So, I was reading this paper by Matthew Ferranti, and he makes a compelling case for it. It's fascinating.
Really? How does Bitcoin compare to gold in that role?
Well, think about it. Gold's been a reserve asset for centuries, right? But Bitcoin is
Right.
it's like digital gold.
But doesn't gold have that historical position?
True, but Bitcoin's roots can be traced back. It's tied to the Industrial Revolution's innovation. It
Interesting.
uses electricity instead of physical labor.
So during crises, does Bitcoin really hold up?
Actually, in some crises, Bitcoin shines. When Silicon Valley Bank failed, Bitcoin's price increased.
Oh,
Same with
wow.
sanctions on Russia's central bank.
But during the pandemic, didn't Bitcoin crash?
Well, yeah, it did drop then, but no asset is perfect in all situations.
Right.
Even US treasuries don't always hold up during inflation spikes.
That's fair. So is Bitcoin a good long-term store of value?
So, its finite supply, only 21 million coins, provides some protection against inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So it could act as a long-term hedge.
But gold has proven itself over centuries. Can Bitcoin match that?
That's a good point, but remember, gold also had decades where it underperformed.
Right.
Bitcoin's potential is still unfolding.
All right, what about portfolio diversification? Does Bitcoin help?
Bitcoin's correlations with traditional assets are low.
Okay.
So it diversifies against different economic shocks.
But didn't its correlation with stocks rise during the pandemic?
It did, but it's decreased since then. So it
I
still
see.
offers diversification benefits.
What about default risk?
Bitcoin doesn't have default risk because it's not a claim on future cash flows, and it's resistant to financial sanctions.
But self-custody has its own risks, doesn't it?
Sure, it requires strong cybersecurity practices, but the benefits might outweigh the risks.
And liquidity? Is Bitcoin liquid enough for central banks?
Yes, its liquidity is comparable to gold.
Got it.
Central banks could handle large transactions.
Does it help with geopolitical diversification?
Absolutely. Bitcoin can hedge geopolitical risks.
Interesting.
Countries under sanctions might find it appealing.
Do you think central banks will actually adopt Bitcoin?
Well, El Salvador has, and others might be doing so quietly.
Maybe.
Portfolio optimization suggests a 2 to 5% allocation.
I'm skeptical. Central banks are pretty conservative.
True, but as Ferranti argues, Bitcoin could help diversify against several risks.
Fair enough.
It's worth considering.
You've given me a lot to think about.
Glad to hear it. Bitcoin as a reserve asset is a fascinating concept.